Namaskar. I'm Parum Misri. I'm 16 and I live in Redmond, Washington. I'm very thankful to be able to participate in this competition, and I hope you enjoy my video. Kashmir sure is a fascinating place. I'd love to know more about its history. Well, you're in luck. I'm you from the near future. Why are you wearing the same clothes as me? That's not important, but what is important is Kashmir's history. The year 1339 CE was a turning point in terms of everything. Art, literature, culture, demographics, but do you know why? I can't say that I do. Well, let me show you. Welcome to the year 1339 CE. You might have noticed the scenery's changed a little bit. That's because we're in ancient Kashmir now. Well, not super ancient considering how old the civilization is, but pretty old nonetheless. So why did you pick this state? Up until this point, Kashmir was mostly dominated by Hinduism. However, this all changed when the Muslim Sultan Shah Mir took control. Before I get into that, let me give you a bit of background on Kashmiri culture prior to this event. For hundreds of years, Kashmir was primarily a Hindu culture. Shaivism and Vaishnavism were the dominant faiths, but Buddhism held an important, albeit slightly smaller place. Popular pastimes in ancient Kashmir included chess, games of dice, playing music, and dancing. Folk theater was a prominent part of the culture and was even occasionally used as a method for religious ceremonies. But back to Shah Mir. He was impactful enough to start an entire dynasty, the Shah Mir Dynasty, which lasted for almost 230 years. Nobody is really sure where he came from, but some speculate he was of Turkish or Persian origin. The reigning monarch in Kashmir at the time was the Hindu queen Kota Rani, who had weathered several attacks by invaders in the previous years, leaving the system in a state of relative chaos, opening a window for Shah Mir to take control. He organized an uprising from within the government, culminating in the death of Kota Rani in 1339. This allowed him to seize power and begin the conversion of Kashmir to an Islamic state. So what effects did that have on the culture? Once Shah Mir took over, he started pushing strongly for Islamic traditions, converting many to Islam. He also displaced a large amount of the previous Hindu population, which allowed Muslims, although not a majority in terms of population, to control most of the area. This was just the beginning of struggles for Hindus in the region, however. Harsh decrees were put out, such as forbidding horse riding, the usage of jewelry, and forcing them to bow to Muslims. However, things reached their most extreme point in 1394 during the reign of Sikandar. The Sultan Sikandar has a unique place in Kashmir's history as one of the most cruel monarchs to have ever ruled. He destroyed countless Hindu temples such as the ones at Martand, Avantipur, Pandetran, and Ganeshbal. Countless precious Hindu works of art and cultural icons were destroyed. Sikandar then issued an order that all Hindus living in Kashmir must convert to Islam. What if they refused? They were killed. Thousands of Hindus died, and thousands more fled the region. It's said that only 11 Hindu families ended up remaining in Kashmir. Sikandar also implemented a tax on all Hindus living in the valley. Those who refused to pay the tax were then tied up and thrown into the Dal Lake to drown. Many ancient Hindu texts were also thrown into the lake. It was a time of tyranny and despair. That sounds pretty bad. Let's go a bit forward. When are we? We just went about 30 years forward. This marks the reign of Zain ul Abidin, also known as Shahi Khan, the 8th Sultan of Kashmir. He was nicknamed Bud Shah, or the Great King, because in contrast to some of his ancestors, he actually ended up doing a lot of good for Kashmir. He also opened trade with many regions, including Egypt, Gwalior, Mecca, Bengal, and Gujarat. He also encouraged the production of local commodities to make Kashmir a notable center of trade, such as paper and textiles, along with unique art such as embroidered tapestries and wood carvings. His actions greatly boosted the silk industry due to an influx of weavers from Khorasan and led to the first introduction of firearms in Kashmir. Well, it sounds like he was good for the economy, but that doesn't always translate into being good for the people. He was actually quite progressive and accepting as well. He was a devout Muslim, but he still respected Hindu culture. He went to sacrifices, he built temples, and he even abolished the tax on Hindus that Sikandar had implemented before him. That's pretty impressive, actually. He promoted Sanskrit language and literature in contrast with his predecessors who mainly focused on Persian and Arabic. He also took an interest in raising the overall level of education in Kashmir and welcomed scholars from all around the world to come share their knowledge. I think I understand why he was called the Great King. However, it's important to note that Zainul Abidin wasn't a great king for all of his reign. He started out similar to the others, continuing some of the cruel practices towards Hindus begun by his predecessors. One day he fell terminally ill, and after his court doctors failed to cure him, he was healed by a Hindu physician named Shri Bhatt. In gratitude, he offered Shri Bhatt whatever he desired. Shri Bhatt asked for the tax on Hindus that Sikandar had implemented to be lifted, and to allow those who had fled the valley during that time to return. Zainul Abidin agreed, and many Hindus returned to the valley. He continued to work for their welfare and eventually became known as one of Kashmir's greatest monarchs. He had a long and prosperous rule, keeping Kashmir stable for the next 50 years. However, the line of sultans in Kashmir ended 85 years later, and then came a new, very brief line of monarchs, the Chaks. They were a line of converts to Muslim faith, with 4 monarchs each lasting for about 7 to 9 years. Their rule was too quick and full of turmoil to have any profound effects on Kashmiri culture, and it ended in 1586 with the rule of the Mughal Emperor Akbar. Akbar is perhaps one of the most famous emperors of India to have ever lived. That's true. Even hundreds of years in the future, we still have stories about him. In any case, Akbar conquered Kashmir while setting up the Mughal Empire, which spanned almost the entire Indian subcontinent. His rule lasted 19 years and brought with it several interesting things. Akbar was notably tolerant of Hinduism despite himself being Muslim, which garnered him respect throughout India. However, he ruled Kashmir through proxy governors, and he himself had little effect on the culture. I know the Mughal Empire eventually broke down. What happened to Kashmir then? Let me show you. We've gone through roughly 400 years of history so far, but there's still 200 more years until the end of the monarchs of Kashmir. Around now, the Mughal influence in Kashmir faded and the area fell into disorder. A series of Afghan rulers then held power, ruling mainly through a series of governors. Their impact was rather similar to that of the early sultans. The practice of forced conversions to Islam was brought back, and many Hindus were prevented from performing their rituals. One ruler, named Jabbar Khan, forced them to celebrate Shivratri in the summer as opposed to the winter when it was customarily held. This brought him ill will from much of the populace. Thankfully, Afghan rule lasted less than 70 years. After that, a man named Ranjit Singh, a Sikh, conquered Kashmir. I know you're probably getting a bit tired of portals at this point, but don't worry. We're pretty close to modern history. So this is around when Maharaja Ranjit Singh conquered most of the northwestern part of India. He was the leader of the Sikh Empire and was respected and feared for good reason. Was he a king like Shah Mir, where he conquered lands and forced them to convert? No, he wasn't. He had a personal rule to never force conversions. However, he did try his hardest to spread Sikh influence throughout his empire, while not quashing other people's beliefs, such as by building gurdwaras, places of Sikh worship. This naturally led to a higher concentration of Sikhs in Kashmir than before. Unlike Akbar and Shahi Khan, he was more inclined towards conquest and warfare than the arts and knowledge. Because of this, there was a cultural shift to a more warlike state, and he recruited people from all faiths to join his powerful army. However, he refused to recruit Britishers despite keeping open diplomatic relations with King George IV. His rule lasted about 20 years. After his death, however, the empire fell into disarray. With 10 rulers in 7 years, and in 1846, Kashmir fell out of Sikh control and into Dogra rule. Dogra rule in Kashmir lasted 101 years, during the peak of British influence. The Indian Rebellion of 1857 occurred during the beginning of their rule, but Kashmir remained neutral due to the fact that the British basically controlled the Dogra. The Dogra's main religion was Hinduism, so this marked the first time in a while that Kashmir was under the control of Hindus. They brought interesting parts of their culture with them, such as ritual dances like Heron, Gwatri, and Karak, and unique cuisine such as Mitha Madra and Kalari cheese, which are now popular dishes in Kashmir. This is around the time of the partition of India, when the British left India and it was divided into modern-day India and Pakistan. The ruling Dogra monarch at the time, Hari Singh, was facing rebellion from his citizens and invasion from Pakistan. So to stabilize the situation, he acceded to the Union of India for military support, leading to Kashmir becoming a democratic state. That was the end of hundreds of years of monarchy. Wow. Alright, I think it's about time we headed back. That sure was an informative trip. I had no idea there was so much intricacy and rich history in the monarchies of Kashmir. Thanks for taking me. I'm glad I could be of help. Until next time!